like to do another song from Test for Echo. A song inspired by the great country of Scotland called Resist.
And welcome back to Rush Roundtable. This is episode 220, where we're going to be talking about Resist off 1996's Test for Echo. And guys, we're going to start over because I suck.
A few moments later.
Hey, welcome back to Rush Roundtable. This is episode 220, where we're going to be talking about Resist from 1996's Test for Echo. We have a great panel. Introduce them. We've got Liam, Rob, Mario, Alex, and Derek, and I'm your host, Paul. If you enjoy our content, do us a favor, hit like and subscribe, and consider tipping us on Ko-fi. And do make sure to visit our sponsors. Links are in the description down below. And talking about Resist, the song was inspired lyrically from a line from Oscar Wilde. I can learn to resist anything but temptation, and that's going to take us directly into the lyrics, so let's get started. I can learn to resist anything but temptation. I can learn to coexist with anything but pain. I can learn to compromise anything but my desires. I can learn to get along with all the things I can't explain. And it has a wicked intro that has a hammered dulcimer, first time that's ever been used in a Rush song, I might add, that was sequenced along with piano. So since I opened with the lyrics as opposed to the intro, guys, let's talk about that intro and those lyrics. What you got?
Well, I remember Lifeson made the comment in a magazine article interview saying that he just thought the dulcimer gave it an extra Celtic feel. I mean, but when you think about it, I mean, a piano, it's hammers striking a string, and a dulcimer is hammers striking a string. So it's, I mean, not that I'm trying to downplay it. I mean, it's great they used it, but it's sort of, it's easy to confuse because when you listen to it, it's sort of, oh yeah, the piano part. Well, it's similar vibe. I mean, the Celtic thing, I mean, the song is in 3/4 time. So and you could think, oh, well, like an Irish jig is 6/8, but that 8 rhythm has a different vibe than a 4 rhythm. So that 3/4, I mean, it is, you can hear the counting of the melodies 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and, as opposed to like 1 or 3, as opposed to a jig, basically. From my point of view, it's one of those classic kind of Rush. We have many chord progression. Oh, I'm sorry, one chord progression that's going through many keys situation. I mean, it's a different sound for the song, a different tonality with a dulcimer, a different approach maybe. But at the same time, too, they still have the B flat going to the C, going to the G. But there's, the suspensions and whatnot that it's kind of like, are we in the key of B flat? Is this B flat really the 4 chord because it's a sus2 going to the 5 chord of C? Then there will be an F coming at us. So, 1, 4, 5, and F. But then we're going to land on a couple of E flats. So is it really B flat? Then E flat's the 4 chord. Well, yes to all of that, because it's basically just using just a lot of 1, 4, 5s kind of overlapping each other. And then it sort of, the tonality breaks into more major minor once we get into the verse. But I just love the fact that they created an 8 measure phrase that has this nice exploration of 4s and 5s, and that G, is it going to be really the 6 chord or a 2 chord coming up? Well, really, yes. But that's me. I don't want to dominate. I don't want to steal the hosting position from you. I've already established that. So mute.
I would just have to say, because I'm winging this, the new sound that comes out with the song continues with the theming of these new song ideas, the new drumming style that Neil used with holding the sticks differently from the jazz influences, and it just continues to show what they want to try out in this album, because this album, I believe, was full of many firsts, including all these different musical styles and influences. And I feel I think of this song, it's very unique and different. And this song was always had a place in my heart, just the way the music just starts with the piano and everything. And I just know it's going to be a good song, a sad song, but a good song.
Yeah, I'd agree to that as well. You mentioned the piano, and some could say it actually recalls back to Warpaint from Presto, as that also used the piano as well throughout the song. And also the simple structure as well also reverts back to Bravado for a few albums back from Roll the Bones.
Lest we get corrected, they used a piano sequencing to track where it was actually recorded as a hammered dulcimer before we get corrected. So, but yeah, written on
Yes.
piano, but then recorded as a hammered dulcimer. So, and then Derek, do you want to
Okay.
talk a little bit on the as far as the drumming goes? I know that it was they Neil held off in the beginning on using the snare, and it was only the hi hats, the toms, and the bass drums for that intro part. I know he wrote it specifically that way. I'm not a drummer, but I know that you watched Work in Progress, didn't you, for this?
No, I didn't. I actually
Oh,
want
you
to
didn't?
comment mostly on the production sound of the song.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, he
So for me, this being somewhat of a ballad, something that Rush never did that often, the lyrics are perfect for this. And to me, this sounds very wispy in a almost like wind kind of way, like not in Roll the Bones or Presto kind of production, but just like the gust of wind that flows. And in life, you're making choices, and that gust of wind, like we get into lyrics later, can be powerful, like a tornado, or it can just be a bright summer breeze. And everything from Getty's O's and the guitar work and the piano, the dulcimer that I didn't even know was part of the song until you guys just mentioned it. But everything just has this nice breezy quality to it, a little bit of uncertainty.
Yeah, and actually the dulcimer on Work in Progress, Neil was boasting that that was like his debut of playing a dulcimer, and he has a lot of pride in having done that. So he gives nods to the dulcimer. So
Well, I guess in terms then of drums, if I may elaborate then, but yes, it was a hi-hat. There was some tom action going on, and also a bit of ride as well. I think I picked up on watching Sterling Fute's cover on YouTube, but also looking back a bit at the work in progress tape as well. So no snare at all whatsoever.
yeah, it's like toms and the gong bass drum that he
Yeah.
uses.
Yeah, and actually on that last line I read, with all the things I can't explain, is where there's a snare build, is where the snare finally does get its introduction in the song there, and then the full band comes in after that last word explain. So, and then kind of a little bit of a solo piece there. Alex has a line there as well. So, and then next set of lyrics is, I can learn to resist anything but frustration. I can learn to persist with anything but aiming low. I can learn to close my eyes to anything but injustice. I can learn to get along with all the things I don't know. And the one line I threw on here for myself in the notes was I found an Oscar Wilde quote: experience is one thing you can't get for nothing. That remind anybody of Something for Nothing? Just wanted to throw that out there.
That's
So,
a good
Yeah,
point.
a good nod back.
Good point.
to that turn.
how you guys feel about the next part?
I think the lyric structure is very reminiscent of Half the World, where he uses I to start each
Yeah.
lyric off, each line of stanza. So that kind of just, for me, the way the lyrics are put together kind of reminds me of Half the World.
Yeah, like an intra perspective. So what Neil's seeing in the world at the time.
This does seem a little bit more into like his a rare. Normally, we've talked countless times about the way his lyrics are written, as he creates a fictional narrative and then injects the story into it. And there's a couple places, both in this and in things we've already covered, where this seems pretty personal. And it's actual the lack of him discussing it in interviews and even the album premiere makes me wonder if maybe this one is from him. Just want
Yeah.
to throw it out there, but it would be very him to. Well, I shouldn't put it that way. I would wonder if his lack of, much like Available Light, him not talking about it turns out to be the more personal one. Makes me wonder.
I mean, the bonus of that is that, even if it is super, super personal, I mean, it's also universal, because who can't, relate to the idea of I can learn to resist anything but any of the temptation that's in front of us.
Yes.
Or closing your eyes to injustice in that matter too. There always seems to be something going on where we want to put up the good fight.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a never, literally, not to use the reference, but because it seems so played and well worn, but it is the never ending battle for every single person to have to do this and do that, whether the never-ending battle's laundry, but whatever never-ending strife, whatever we consistently find in our lives, it's called our lives from beginning to end, and that's literally everybody.
Well, that line, I can learn to persist with anything but aiming low. That is the most Neil quote in this song, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, and then at that point, I mean, that's where I was defaulting to resist, or frustration, temptation. But yeah, when you get more specific, yeah, Neil's a good example, the perfect example of, yeah, he's not going to aim low. He's not going to aim to the middle. He's not going to aim to the lower part of high.
Exactly. And before we deify him, the three of them weren't. They always strove for. That's why there's no B-sides. What they write, what they put out there, and what's their favorite album? The newest one. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and another note I found was that the song was initially called Taboo and was initially going to be a companion piece to Totem in homage to Freud's Totem and Taboo. And then they switched it up too. So. All right, moving on lyrically. I can learn to resist anything but temptation. I can learn to coexist with anything but pain. I can learn to compromise anything but my desires. I can learn to get along with all the things I can't explain. Again, which then takes us into solo interlude and the middle 16.
Well, that solo, I mean, I was saying before we began taping, and I was saying even last week for Virtuality, because like with Virtuality, the riff is so frenetic and chock full of notes that are non-diatonic. The choruses would be straightforward, and the solo was more of just a melody. And the same thing here, even though this song it still has that driving, forward propulsion that many of us have loved from Rush songs. The once again, the solo is really more of I'm playing more of a melodic piece, as opposed to tearing it up and going buck wild, which I might have literally said the word buck wild last week. Anyway, be that as it may, D minor pentatonic that kind of sells more of the progression, because in that respect, they for the solo they cut the progression in half, so it's more just the B flat, the C, the G sus, and the F. So it is more like, all right, 4-5-2-1 chord progression in the key of F, D minor pentatonic. It carries the solo forward. Or, I'm sorry, the song. Sorry.
Yeah.
So this song to me is like trying not to use superlatives here, but sort of the perfect marriage between melody, lyric, percussion, as far as this album goes. Album catches a lot of heat for being inconsistent. This song to me really does marry all the elements really, really well, which surprises me that it got that acoustic version. Not complaining, and we'll talk about it after we get through the song, but it just surprises me that such a well orchestrated song, that's the one we're going to keep, but that's the one we're going to change. Just kind of surprised me, but
I like the melody of the melodic whatever you were saying before, how he had the high Getty's high voice and then Getty's low voice was like everything but pain, like that, and you could hear the high and the low together, and I think that's what really makes it a good song that gives me chills, because not many songs that I feel really hit you that hard with the melodic like that than this song, the way you could just hear both his high and his low voice, and that's what I like about this song very much.
and it seems like a more timeless song too. Think about like songs like Test for Echo, where it's very current, or even Virtuality, where it seems very contemporary. This song has a sort of a timeless feel to it, a little bit more classic Rush feel to it.
It's emotional. It's a very emotional song.
Yeah.
Like if you had to introduce somebody to Rush, this could be a great song to like, hey, check out this one, because it's always like Moving Pictures is the go-to, but this particular tune and album is a really good go-to for anyone that's trying to get into the band. My
Good
opinion.
point.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to take us into the bridge, where things kind of come down. Mario's mentioned how the song's very dynamic. Things kind of come to a pause and a slow. You can surrender without a prayer. but never really pray, pray without surrender. You can fight, fight without ever winning, but never ever win, win without a fight. You guys feel
I
about
like
that?
this section because it starts like the beginning of the tune. The hi-hat works different, but it's got that
Mm.
same vibe to it, the way the song began in terms of Neil's part, just hi-hat, so especially when you get to You Can Fight, that's when it gets a little more similar to the opening hi-hat work.
But I just like the lyrics. It's just so quiet, and it's just like, I don't know if there's any other song where it's just like he sings and there's like no music whatsoever. It's just something about that I like. You just hear nothing but Getty's pure voice, and it's just, ooh, that gives me chills also.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean the chord progression lifes and just kind of just quasi RP strums out. The chord lets it ring and decay, which yeah, like Mario was saying, it creates that nice spacious effect for the voice. And at this point, in true bridge fashion, they actually bring in a desus too, but then keep most of the chords the same. Just because you gotta change the chord when you get to the bridge.
Of course.
It's just, come on, why even have a bridge if you're not going to
It's
bring in
not
a
a
different
bridge if
chord?
you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, we come out of the bridge. Finally, the snare comes in and a build-up of lower toms, gong toms. And then we get this awesome triplet, and then it comes on with a tom roll to then lead us back into the verse. Absolutely amazing part done by Neil. I love it so much.
That staccato build, that was a flying brick, I think is the term. Just that's where my chills are, right there. That build right there. Before we move on from this, yeah, that to me that's the high point until the end, but that
Yeah.
crescendo. But there is one quick story I found when I was doing some digging. Neil did an interview with Pamela Wallen back in '96, where he brought up a story that's actually in Masked Rider as well. When he was in a monastery in Cameroon, in a Swiss church, there was a Vesper service where there was a musical piece they were performing, and he was reflecting on basically on religion. Before I turn the story too long-winded, but it had him reflecting on faith and religion, and it's so simple to dismiss it and say, Neil wasn't religious or anything like that, but he was reflecting on spirituality and on their faith. And the line here, you can surrender without a prayer, but never really pray. You never really pray without surrender. Think about that line for a minute. You never really pray without surrender. That line's written by somebody who appreciates the power of someone's faith. I'm not saying he has it or doesn't have it. That's not the point. The line there, but you can never really pray without surrender. That's someone who at least understands the concept of faith. And the same thing with, you can fight without ever winning, but you can't ever win without a fight. It just, that whole struggle that faith brings, just that appreciation of it.
Yeah.
Lyrically, I think that's probably the strongest line. Well, okay, I'm injecting superlatives again. I appreciate those lines the most in the song because they're the most
Yeah.
introspective ones that I appreciate. I'll put it that way.
I guess
So,
when you think about the context, like you said, with the him visiting that, it makes a lot of sense as well.
yes. So, okay. As we explained, this is where that building crescendo comes in, that with that flying brick, and then all the instrumentation comes in. Then the layered vocals start up, and this is kind of my high point for Getty, whereas I can learn
Yeah.
to close my eyes, and the vocals start layering to anything but injustice. I can learn to get along with all the things I don't know. I can learn to close my eyes, and Getty's hitting those high notes on the layered vocal. I can learn to resist to anything but injustice. I can learn to get along with all the things I don't know. And then as an outro, I've got notes here saying, the full band is coming in. The bass is playing along with the hammer dulcimer, which I thought was excellent. I love that line, that progression there. And then Alex has a lead line there, and then it ends with the 3 acoustic strums and the fade out. And I know
Yeah.
I kind of threw it all together, but how do you guys feel about that whole piece? Just jump in.
Well,
I
thinking
guess.
of,
Oh, you first.
I'll go quickly then. Okay. It was in the previous verse where they really brought in the vocals doubled an octave apart. But in this verse, the beginning of it, the vocals wind up, he has a static vocal, on F, and then he has the higher vocal actually descending. So that way they have intervals of sixth, fifth, fourth. They bring in a high, then he goes higher, and they have a higher third. So at that point, they're the for this final verse, it's just kind of a buildup of the intricacy of the vocal harmonies, like true, because I mean, obviously an octave's not really a harmony, but in this case, for this verse, they just went, they just went all out with the vocal harmonies, basically. Which, once again, just the build up to, hey, here's where we are going out on a high note, literally, and let's harmonize that high note.
Yes. I think the best way to summarize that bit from a quote from Canadian musician in 1996 from Getty, he says, Resist is one of the best songs we've written. I knew from the beginning it was a special Rush song that just had that kind of energy that came from all of us and when we wrote and recorded it.
Yeah, it's really just a great example too of arrangement, how they actually put things together, the way Neil constructed and composed his parts. He's not just playing tempos and beats. He really thinks about every aspect of what he puts together for the song. How we can, ride with Neil, with Spaghetti on his vocals, how we can follow him, how we can mirror parts, when to come in, when to not. And actually, there's parts too in the song where he deliberately cuts out and then he comes in. So it's like he actually incorporates space into his parts, not just playing tempo, from what he learned from Freddie. The idea of motion and using the body a certain way when you play, and that reflects on the music and how the music comes across. Because his clock was different, as we talked about throughout this album, on past roundtables. His clock changed. So that therefore Geddy and Alex had to approach their parts differently and use that. So it was a very, very interactive album. Not to pun on virtuality, but it's the interplay of the guys really. It's this song really kind of, especially at this section of the tune where there's so much going on in here, but it's very well put together. There's no fat in this section at all. It's all, everything's supposed to be there where it is in its right place. Totally works.
And Getty was at a vocal peak at this time too.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, before everything kind of started going downhill in terms of vocal ability and just wear and tear from over the years.
I love
vary on the degree of the slant.
Yeah, there were still kids in their 40s at that point, so
Yeah.
That'll be for a later roundtable.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I have to ask then, now that we've gone through the meat of the song, I'm gonna put you guys on the spot. I'll call you individual each. Original Test for Echo version or acoustic version? Which do you prefer? Static answer, Liam.
All right. Well, looking at both sides of it,
It's a
being one of
preference.
it's a preference. Okay, fine. Obviously, since I've grown up with the original Test for Echo version, since buying the CD around 2015 in Sydney, I'm gonna have to give it to the original '96 recording, just because of the added drums in, and there wasn't any drums in the acoustic R30 version released in 03, 04. So, as a drummer, I show bias towards the original version.
Mario.
I would have to agree with Liam on this. I am used to the original version. The original version gives me chills, and it needs more than just guitars. And that's why I like the original version.
Alex.
I have to say the same thing. I didn't actually listen to this album for a while. And then once we were heading towards discussing it, I put it in my car and whatnot and started listening to it a little more. And I kind of got so used to hearing the acoustic version that, this arrangement it fell out of my head apparently. And then really listening to it again, a bunch, even, today, obviously, it's sort of like there's a lot of really good stuff here. So yeah, I have to default to their original vision of this song too.
Derek.
I gotta go with the original version. The drumming, Alex's this wistful guitar work is just beautiful. The best thing about the acoustic version, though, is that Neil got to take a break.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right after the drum solo, you're right. You're right.
I'm assuming he passed out.
yeah.
Rob.
Yeah, I say original as well. I got to see them play it live, so that's that seals it for me. So it's and I do appreciate the acoustic version and the reasoning for it. It's really a folk song when you come down to it. I think that's what their reasoning was to put it in, to R30 and also Vapor Trails. But I definitely appreciate that a lot. And just it gave even more showcase to Getty's voice doing it acoustic, because they've always been playing around the idea of doing something acoustic and they never got to do it. So that was a great opportunity to have that happen, and to really hear, to get even more goosebumps to hear Getty do that high note, when they played acoustic. So yeah, but original version for me, that does it.
And if you would have asked me maybe a year ago, I might have said the acoustic version, but I think it was Alex who pointed out listening to it recently gave me a more full appreciation, especially watching Work in Progress and seeing how how specifically how the percussion came through, and then the listens I gave to it for this definitely brought back that, because I saw it in '96 as well, where it's like, oh yeah. So it definitely reignited that for me as well. So in the comments section, again, these were preferences we voiced. Leave the pitchforks at home. Let us know which one you prefer and why. Maybe, hey, the argument could definitely be made for the acoustic version. If so, simply let us know why you prefer it. These are preferences. We're not stating facts here. So that being said, I want to thank everybody for showing up today and bringing it. And again, a reminder, hit like, subscribe for more great Rush content from Rush fans. And please leave us a tip on Ko-fi. Hit up our
Sponsors.
Thank you. Our sponsors, links in the description. And we will catch you next time.